The other day here, we broke a story on the El Presidente of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto. Well, we didn't really break a story. We repeated a story that was on CNN. And he was interviewed by Fareed Zakaria, who has his own problems right now. And here's what El Presidente said about we, the people in America. Cut 12, go.
But when you hear some of the anti-immigrant language, the rhetoric, do you think it's racist?
I think it's discriminatory, yes, and I think it's unfortunate for a country whose formation and historic origin relies so much on the migration flows of many parts. Europe, Asia, for instance. I think this is a origin, to a great extent, is one of migration. And that's why it's unfortunate to hear exclusionary and discriminatory tone regarding the migration flows into the United States.
I see. But the migration flows into Mexico, that's not discriminatory or racist or bigoted, is it, ladies and gentlemen? And, of course, we all know the corrupt Mexican government has among the most severe immigration laws, don't they, ladies and gentlemen? And if this guy were any good, most of the people who are Mexican citizens living in America would be returning to Mexico, wouldn't they, ladies and gentlemen? So I have to ask you this. Who is it who is racist? El Presidente's racist for what he said about us. And I don't even know if he likes his own people, since they're escaping his government, Mexico under his leadership, to come here. Or not leaving America to go there. Paradise, you know. I dug up an article, the reason I played this again, by a fellow named Ruben Navarrete, Jr. I'm not a big fan of this guy necessarily. I think he's taken a few swipes at me over the years. He's also a columnist, or was, for the Washington Compost. But he wrote a piece a couple years ago about what goes on in Mexico and the bigotry in Mexico. You know, the way we think of these things, it's homogeneous there. Well, it's not. And in part of his column, we will link to the entire thing if you wish to read it. I want to go to the part that I want to emphasize. He writes, and yet, even with all the progress and openness in Mexico over the past few years, there's still one subject that no one talks about, and that is still off limits. Race. The enduring taboo subject is skin color. Whether an individual's complexion betrays an allegiance to the Spanish, who conquered the Aztec Empire in 1521, or the Aztecs, who were conquered. It's no and let me just stop right there. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, even though every nation is a nation of immigrants, every nation has a history. And so it is that many of the so-called natives in Mexico, Aztecs among others, were displaced by the Spanish. And I suppose the Spanish are prepared to leave their lands in Mexico and give them back to the Aztecs, the natives, or those with Aztec blood, I should say. But let's continue. He says it's no exaggeration to say that in this country, meaning Mexico, and especially in this city, meaning Mexico City, the best, highest-paying, most important jobs often seem to go to those who, in addition to having the best education and the strongest connections, have the lightest skin. On television, in politics, and in academia, you see light-skinned people. On construction sites and police forces and in restaurant kitchens, you're more likely to find those who are dark-skinned. In the priciest neighborhoods, the homeowners have light skin, and the housekeepers are dark. Everyone knows this, and yet no one talks about it, at least not in elite circles. Ooh, you mean it's bigotry and racism? Nor do Mexicans seem all that eager to discuss the larger dynamic that race feeds into. The fact that this is and has always been a country of deep divisions. It's talking of Mexico. In the 100 years since the Mexican Revolution, one part of Mexico has often been at war with another. Urban versus rural, rich versus poor, and yes, dark-skinned versus light-skinned. It's one reason that institutions such as the economy, the political system, and the social structure haven't matured as quickly as they should have, given Mexico's advantages. Wow. All this racism in Mexico. This country of 120 million people has ports and highways, airports, and skyscrapers. Takes in billions of dollars every year in revenues from oil and natural gas, billions more from tourism and remittances from Mexican migrants living abroad. Mexico's economy, this is 2 years ago, is growing faster than the U.S. economy, and investments are flowing in from Asia and Europe. It's consistently within the top 3 of trading partners for the U.S. But what good is all that when only a small number of the population can live up to their full potential? Prejudice kills progress. The hour is late. It's time for Mexico to confront the color line and free itself of its past, or it won't have much of a future. Very interesting. Now, this tells us a lot of things. You see, it's the racist El Presidente of Mexico, a light-skinned Mexican, no doubt with significant Spanish blood, as Mr. Navarrete would point out. His policies, and the policies of Vicente Fox and others, light-skinned Mexican presidents, who have encouraged poor, darker-skinned Mexicans to come to America, where I might add they're treated apparently better than they are back in Mexico, which is one of the reasons they come here. This is a very, very interesting dynamic that has been concealed for the longest time if I hadn't dug into and dusted off this article by Ruben Navarrete. But that's why the people who are coming across the border who are Mexican, not all, but many, are poor, illiterate, and encouraged to do so, truthfully, being exported into this country by the government of Mexico, which is run by light-skinned, for the most part, Mexicans. I didn't make this stuff up. I just read it to you. Now, it's too bad the moron who did the interview at CNN, I assume it's Wolf Blitzer, but there's so many morons over there, who could tell, didn't know this information and didn't ask the president about this, nor did he ask the president about Mexico's immigration laws, which are brutal, discriminatory, racist against Central and South Americans who are not Mexicans. I thought you'd want to know.